I am about to tell you is the absolute truth. No matter how absurd or ridiculous it might sound, I swear to you with everything I have that it all really happened. My husband is trying to kill me. See? You think I've lost my mind too. After all, he is so wonderfully perfect that even I thought I was the one going crazy. Sometimes, I honestly wish I actually were insane that we grew up in the same neighborhood. Our houses sitting right next to each other. He was the kind of kid who naturally drew a crowd, always trailed by a noisy, bustling group of followers wherever he went. My family had just moved there because of my dad's job transfer, making us the outsiders. As you can probably guess, I was pretty ostracized. My mom was highly educated and held me to a strict set of standards, so having a daughter like me naturally made her quite proud and aloof. Since those kids ignored me, I refused to play with them either. During the summer, they would tear through the yard, causing a racket that disturbed the entire block. Finding them incredibly annoying, I would shut my window and read. But they still insisted on throwing things at my window to provoke me. Looking outside, I saw him standing right at the front of the pack. While everyone else was holding pebbles, he was different. He held a small bag of plums and tilted his head as he looked at me. I was furious. Hey, why are you smashing my windows? Oh, you are home. He laughed as soon as he saw me, flashing a bright white smile like a little rascal. I thought nobody was around. Does no one being home mean you can smash windows? Well, you caught me, so now I feel a bit bad, he said. How about you come down, and I'll apologize to you. After he said that, the kids behind him started jeering. Some called me a coward, while others told him not to play with girls. Unable to handle the taunts, I stomped downstairs. Fuming, we stood face to face in silence until he suddenly asked, "Want a plum?" Huh. I was a little caught off guard. Did you wash them? They're all washed, try one, he offered, grabbing a handful and holding them out to me. I only took one, taking a bite as he watched with eager anticipation. It was the first time I had ever tasted anything so sour, and my entire face scrunched up from the tartness. He raised an eyebrow. Is it really sour? Unable to speak and completely overwhelmed, I burst into tears. That set off a disaster as the whole group erupted into laughter. He chuckled briefly too, but quickly dropped his smile, leaned in close, and whispered, I didn't know they were that sour. Hey, I'm James, what's your name? Ignoring him, I covered my mouth and ran upstairs. When I looked out from my house, the group was already walking away with their arms draped over each other's shoulders. Trailing at the very back, he looked up, and our eyes met. He mimicked a crying gesture with his hands, mocking the tears I had just shed. You might say he liked me, and was just trying to get my attention on purpose. Thinking back on it now, that was probably the case. But I was young back then, and only understood that he was bullying me. I had a weak constitution and always caught a cold when the seasons changed. The trees outside my window had shed all their leaves, and as I lay in bed, hazy with a fever, I heard someone calling me from downstairs. Aurora. It was him again. I didn't want to deal with him, but he kept shouting my name in every tone imaginable. You have no idea how infuriating he was as a kid. He was loud and had boundless energy. Finally, I dragged myself out of bed and asked, What do you want now? You really are home, he grinned at me. I was just calling out for fun. I couldn't help but roll my eyes, which he found incredibly fascinating. Aren't you supposed to be a proper lady? You roll your eyes too. I'm sick, I told him. I don't have the energy to argue. He quieted down, and after a long moment, I heard a knock on my front door. Aurora. He haunted me like a ghost. The moment I opened the door, he shot inside like a cannonball and immediately started scolding me. Why are you wearing so little when you're sick? Get back in bed right now. James, I asked him, why aren't you at school? You actually remembered my name. I skipped class today, and when I heard noises from your house, I came over to check on you. He said it so nonchalantly while practically dragging me back to bed, then quickly darted off to fetch me a glass of hot water. Making himself completely at home, he felt my forehead. You're burning up. I was trying to sleep earlier, but you woke me up. Then I apologize. Aurora, your face is so red. You look like a ripe tomato. He always talked like that since we were little, like a tiny hoodlum, and he grew up to be an even bigger one. Everyone assumed he would turn into a total playboy who broke young girls' hearts. But who could have ever predicted how things would turn out? Back then, I found him absolutely unbearable. But he pestered me every single day. He was naturally brilliant, easily ranking in the top 10 of our grade without studying much, and his name was always plastered high up on the school's honor roll. Yet, while everyone else was hitting the books, he would grab his fishing rod and head to the nearby lake, returning all afternoon with a small bucket of fish that he delivered straight to my house. I had no interest in his gifts and blocked the doorway, so he couldn't get in. He just gave me a cheeky grin. "I'm not here to kidnap a bride. Why are you so tense?" "I don't want these, take them back." "You can't take back a gift once it's given, right?" Probably afraid to force his way past me, he tilted his head looking a bit pathetic. "Do you really hate me that much?" I didn't know how to answer, but right then my mom called out from inside. "Who's at the door?" He seized the opportunity and replied, "Ma'am, it's me." He was unbelievably thick-skinned, but my mom actually laughed. "Oh, James is here. Aurora, why are you blocking the door? Let him in." Just like that, he made himself right at home, chatting and laughing with my mother. He could strike up a conversation with absolutely anyone and had my mom laughing the entire time. After he left, she even remarked, "Look at that boy. He's going to achieve great things." I stayed silent and she scolded me again. "You just moved here and don't have many friends. Why do you give him the cold shoulder?" I thought for a long time before muttering softly, "He always bullies me." "He only does that because he likes you, and from what I can see, you seem to like him quite a bit too." When my mom claimed I liked him, I felt like I had been falsely accused of a terrible crime. To make my stance perfectly clear, I began treating him even colder whenever I saw him. As the undisputed king of the kids in our neighborhood and at school, surrounded by an entourage wherever he went. How could he possibly stand me treating him like that? After school, he cornered me on the sports field behind the building. Almost everyone had gone home, and the field was dotted with neat piles of fallen leaves, which he maliciously kicked over. I couldn't hold back. "Someone swept those into neat piles. Why did you have to kick them apart?" "Because I felt like it." He clicked his tongue. "Aurora, what is your problem?" "What do you mean? What's my problem?" "Stop playing dumb with me." He tilted his head with a cocky swagger. "I just don't get it. Why do you find me so annoying? What did I ever do to you?" I didn't say a word and turned to leave, but he lunged forward and grabbed my hand. The sound of the security guard's footsteps echoed in the distance. It was almost time to clear the grounds. Feeling anxious and gripped by an inexplicable sense of fear, my tears suddenly fell, landing right on his wrist. He yanked his hand back with a sharp hiss, as if he had been burned. Seizing the chance, I bolted toward the exit, only glancing back at him once I reached the gate. The setting sun was a brilliant crimson mixed with streaks of orange, bathing the world in rich oil paint colors. He stood in the distance with his hands stuffed in his pockets, watching me. Seeing me look back, he called out my name again, "Aurora." I remained silent, and he seemed to smile, or maybe he didn't. Before turning around and walking in the opposite direction. Don't you think he was an idiot? The fence at the back had no opening, so wasn't he just trapping himself inside the school? I only found out later that he lost his footing while climbing over the fence that day and dislocated his arm. Because of his injury, he finally didn't have the time to bother me. I wanted to go visit him, but my pride wouldn't let me. By the time I stopped hesitating, exam season had arrived, and my mom had signed me up for extracurricular tutoring classes. I would head out every weekend, rushing from one class to the next. Once, while biking halfway to class, my tire caught a nail. A group of tough-looking guys stood by the side of the road, smoking and smirking at me. I pretended to look straight ahead, but I was actually terrified on the inside. No matter what I did, I couldn't fix the bike, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of the guys stand up and start walking toward me. My anxiety spiked, and I considered just ditching the bike and running away. Right at that moment, someone walked up from the other side, slung an arm around my shoulder, and pulled me securely into his embrace. Even if I don't say it, you can probably guess. Hey, don't laugh. Yes, it was James. I had no idea how he managed to show up exactly then, but he maintained his usual cocky demeanor, smiled at the group, and said, "Why are you tossing nails under people's tires?" "This chick belongs to you." They sounded ridiculous, just a bunch of punks trying to act like tough guys. But I was too afraid to speak, and held tightly in his arms. I had absolutely no desire to pull away. He tipped his chin up. "We grew up together, understand?" Saying that, he crouched down to inspect the tire, then simply lifted my bike off the ground and started walking forward. I stood frozen in place until he impatiently called out, "Are you a pig? Hurry up." Suddenly snapping out of it, I hurried after him. The guys behind us jeered and laughed, making my face burn hot, and I kept my head down, too afraid to look at him. He carried the bike effortlessly, still finding the breath to lecture me. "Are you stupid? They obviously wanted to mess with you. Why didn't you just run away? Why did you come here?" I asked. "If I didn't show up, you'd be crying your eyes out again today." Bringing that up made me feel incredibly awkward. "Thank you. Now you're being polite to me. Aurora, you really draw a clear line between favors and grudges." We walked in silence for a long time until he dropped my bike off at the repair shop, waved his hand, and turned to leave. I deliberated for a long time before finally speaking up to ask, "How is your arm doing?" "It's been fine for a long time." Seeing that I had gone quiet again, he let out a short scoff. "If that's all, I'm taking off. I really don't hate you, and I don't find you annoying either." The delivery was terribly awkward, and even I felt like an idiot. He stared at me with a straight face for so long that I started to squirm, and then, suddenly, he broke into a massive grin. He was handsome enough to be the most popular guy in school, and when he smiled like that, my heart skipped a beat, leaving me stuttering and completely unable to speak. "Of course I know that," he said. "Aurora, how can you be so silly?" He called me silly, and honestly, whenever I was around him, I really didn't seem all that smart. When we went to college, we ended up right next door to each other again. He got into an engineering college, and I was at the liberal arts college right next to it. His school had an absurdly high ratio of guys, while mine had an absurdly high ratio of girls, so the students from both sides always teased each other when they met. Once, a classmate dragged me over to his school to watch a basketball game, and the bleachers were packed almost entirely with girls from our college. From far away, I spotted him standing there, standing out like a crane among a flock of chickens. That I stood there watching him for a second, and somehow, he immediately caught sight of me. He started walking straight toward me. Because he was the center of attention in the entire gym, his approach dragged everyone's eyes right over to me too. Feeling terribly uncomfortable, I whispered, "Why did you come over here?" "Just to say hi." He handed me his bottle of water. "It's so hot today. Why did you come out to join this crowd? It's not like I came to see you. Give it a rest." He raised his eyebrows, completely used to my attitude. "If you ever actually managed to say something nice to me, I'd seriously worry you swallowed the wrong medication." I let out an exasperated laugh. "I don't have the energy to deal with you." As we were talking, the referee blew the whistle, signaling them to get on the court. I gave him a little push. "Hurry up and go." He let out an acknowledgement, took 2 steps away, and then turned back around with a hesitant look. "Don't leave too early later." "Why not?" "Because then you won't get to see me win." He could be so full of himself sometimes, but he actually did win that game. In the final seconds, he scored a slam dunk, and objectively speaking, it was incredibly cool. The entire gym erupted with screams and cheers, and he stood there like a superstar, soaking up everyone's adoration. All the girls were screaming his name, but after receiving his medal, he sprinted directly toward me. "I told you I was going to win, see? I saw it. That last dunk was pretty cool." It was nothing," he replied, feigning modesty. "It was pretty easy." Standing next to him meant dealing with everyone staring at us, which I absolutely hated, but he didn't give me a choice and just threw his arm around my shoulders. I was shorter than him and couldn't break free, tucked under his arm like a little baby chick. That day we went to a loud, rowdy barbecue joint, completely surrounded by chaotic chatter, where we had to scream at the top of our lungs just to talk to each other. He took care of grilling the meat for me, picked out all the pieces I didn't like, and kept my drink topped off. I casually glanced up and caught him holding his glass, taking a sip while watching me with a soft smile. The restaurant's lights were blindingly bright, yet he kept his eyes locked on me without blinking, his expression so intensely focused it was as if no one else in the world existed. I zoned out for a second, absently chewed a couple of bites, but finally couldn't hold back the question. Why are you staring at me? Aurora. He spoke so gently. You eat with such enthusiasm, just like a little pig. How could someone be so incredibly good at pissing people off? I kicked him under the table, but he brushed it off entirely and kept provoking me. Am I wrong? I'm done talking to you. You can't do that. He grinned again. You're not allowed to ignore me for the rest of your life. There are plenty of people lining up to talk to you. You won't miss just me. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had messed up and could only pray he hadn't heard them. But his eyes lit up immediately. He stared at me, trying to hold back a smile before teasingly dragging out his words. Hey, are you jealous? I pretended I hadn't heard him clearly, but he was completely relentless. Say something, are you jealous? Why would I be jealous over you? Why wouldn't you be jealous over me? He gazed at me across a table full of barbecue and an entire world of noise. I should have looked down, but I didn't. He possessed some kind of magic that made it impossible to look away from him for even a single second. Is it really that hard to admit you like me? Did I like him? My mom said I liked him, my best friend said I liked him, and even he was saying it, I couldn't stay stubborn any longer. I was a guilty criminal caught red-handed, clinging to my affection in the shadows, foolishly believing no one had noticed. This moment caught me entirely off guard. I stared blankly at his sharp, thick eyebrows as he waited patiently for my answer. It felt like there had never been a quieter moment in my entire life. He was practically holding his breath, watching me with absolute devotion, as though I were the judge about to hand down a verdict on his fate. Who could possibly resist a look like that? At the very least, I couldn't. I surrendered unconditionally. If you really have to ask, yes, I like you. The second the words fell from my lips, his smile exploded. He shot up from his seat, reached across the table, and pulled me into a fierce hug. He pressed my entire face tightly against his chest. His body was scorching hot, radiating an indescribable wave of pure happiness that completely washed over me. Aurora, Aurora, Aurora. What is it? I don't know what to say. He stammered, his voice catching in his throat as if he was about to cry. I feel like I'm dreaming. Getting together felt like the most natural thing in the world, and when my mom found out, she teased me endlessly. I knew you liked him. You've always been so stubborn since you were a little girl. Thank goodness James had the patience to wait around for you, or else you'd be crying your eyes out when someone else snatched him up. It was really so strange. He clearly wasn't a well-behaved kid, yet all the adults absolutely adored him. He was the most prominent guy on campus, and during our junior year, rumors started spreading about a highly competitive overseas exchange program in his department, with everyone predicting the spot would inevitably go to him. I heard the rumors vaguely but never asked him about it. Yet he immediately rushed over to declare his loyalty to me. It's all nonsense. I'm absolutely not going. Why not? It sounds like a great opportunity. Overseas technology is way ahead in your major, and going over there for a couple of years to build up your resume would be fantastic for your career. Chewing on the straw of the iced coffee he bought me, my voice trailed off halfway through my sentence. He stared at me for a long time, then suddenly reached out and flicked my forehead. It stung quite a bit, and I cried out, "What was that for?" Aurora, how can you be so heartless? If I go abroad, what are you going to do? Listen to what he was saying. What did he mean? What was I going to do? I wasn't a child. Was I just going to drop dead without him around? Yet an inexplicable feeling swelled in my chest, as if I were completely submerged in sweetness, and I murmured softly, "It would be good for you to go." "I'm only good when I'm right beside you," he replied. "Are you actually this dense, or are you just playing dumb?" He was my first love, and I honestly had no idea if other people's relationships were as suffocatingly sweet as ours. But he always found new ways to make me fall even deeper in love with him. I couldn't help but wonder if he genuinely possessed some kind of magic. Why else would my heart stop belonging to me the moment I looked at him? This was a seriously dangerous situation. Teachers had always taught us since childhood that nothing good ever just falls from the sky, and that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Having such a massive gift dropped right into my lap left me feeling insecure? Yes. That was the exact word. I felt insecure. I didn't know when it started, but my heart was constantly gripped by an anxious dread, almost as if the entire world around me wasn't real. Only when he was right beside me could I finally feel grounded and safe. That I knew these thoughts weren't normal, so I even sought out psychological counseling. The therapist was a strict Freudian who attributed the internal logic of every human behavior back to sexual and romantic relationships. He claimed that I loved James far too much, which made me terrified of losing him and subconsciously drove me to keep him locked by my side. I only went to one session and never returned after hearing his theory. Not because he was incompetent, but because his conclusion was fundamentally flawed. It was never me who wanted to keep James locked by my side. I can't go into the specific details, but James's possessiveness was incredibly intense. Once grad school applications came around, my family wanted me to pursue higher education, and since my grades were excellent, getting a master's degree was the logical next step. James agreed, but he refused to let me study under the advisor I originally wanted, vehemently insisting that I switch to an entirely different university. My original prospective advisor was highly respected in the industry, and as an undergraduate at the same institution, I had a natural advantage in applying to him, meaning I had absolutely no reason to give that up. I discussed it calmly with James, assuming he was just joking around, but he grew increasingly agitated, eventually exploding in pure rage and issuing a final ultimatum. If you insist on going with that advisor, then we're breaking up. Break up? Was an incredibly heavy phrase, and by the time I processed it, he had already stormed out. I didn't understand psychology, but tell me, did he have some kind of psychological issue too? Something like extreme control freak tendencies? Naturally, we didn't break up that time. The day he came looking for me, it was pouring rain, the heavy drops smacking loudly against everything. I had just hung up a phone call when he rang, and seeing his name light up on my screen left me a bit dazed. The line was filled with the deafening sound of the rain, yet strangely enough, I could perfectly hear the sound of his breathing. He sounded congested, like he had caught a cold, muttering a quick hello before falling dead silent. I let out a heavy sigh. "What is it?" he whispered softly. "Can we please not break up?" His words actually made me laugh out of sheer exasperation. I wasn't the one who wanted to break up in the first place. I was wrong, he admitted, sounding utterly defeated. "Can you forgive me?" I asked him, "Where are you right now?" He hesitated for a second before answering. "Right outside your building." I glanced down through the window. The torrential downpour was washing away the shapes of the entire world. He stood out there, completely drenched. I sprinted downstairs, but the second he saw me, he shoved me back under the awning. "Don't come out here. The rain is too heavy." "Why didn't you bring an umbrella?" I didn't have time to grab one. Looking exactly like a massive dog that had been kicked out of its home, he leaned pitifully against the doorway, terrified of being pushed away, yet desperate to get closer. I reached my hand out to him, and he took it with extreme caution. I really was wrong. What else was I supposed to do? I loved him, and he loved me. A trivial argument like this was practically meaningless in the face of our love. I already contacted that other advisor and withdrew my application. I looked at him and added, "I had just hung up the phone. If you had called a second later, I would have been the one calling you to tell you." He didn't make a sound for the longest time, so I tentatively poked his arm. "Hey." He suddenly crushed me into a fierce hug, pressing my face into his soaking wet chest, and even over the roaring sound of the rain, I could clearly hear his heartbeat. "Aurora, I really can't live without you." Even to this day, I have no idea why he adamantly refused to let me study under that advisor. Whenever I asked him, he would just laugh it off. "I was worried someone would bully you." Who on earth was going to bully me? He always thought I was far too fragile. We didn't fight again for a very long time after that incident. Once I graduated with my master's degree, I decided I didn't want to pursue a PhD. He didn't voice any objections. He simply picked the perfect moment to propose to me. We had known each other for nearly 20 years. How many 20-year periods do you get in a single lifetime? As the years drifted by, it was incredibly rare for two people to actually end up together. Of course, I accepted his proposal, and our two families joyfully began discussing dates for the wedding. He took me to try on wedding dresses. The gown was absolutely breathtaking. The hem was heavily dusted with crushed diamonds that sparkled under the lights like a sky full of fallen stars. Standing in front of the mirror, I caught a glimpse of him walking into the room out of the corner of my eye, stopping a few feet away to just watch me. I was about to say something, but the moment I saw his face, I swallowed the words right back down. His expression was truly bizarre. It looked like he was watching me, yet simultaneously staring straight through an eternity of time at something else entirely. I suddenly felt tense for no reason at all. He walked over slowly, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and whispered, "So beautiful. I still have 2 more dresses I haven't tried on yet. This one is perfect, I really love it." "James, what's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "Do you love me? Why would you ask something like that?" He laughed, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "Who else could I possibly love besides you?" I never doubted his love for me. I had witnessed every single drop of his affection firsthand. It was like watching a heavy blizzard fall. You can't point out exactly which snowflake hit the ground first, but the sheer white blanket covering the earth is what forever stains your memory. His love for me was something I never needed to question. That was what I repeatedly told myself. The wedding was scheduled for the following spring. After much discussion, we ultimately decided to throw a formal wedding instead of keeping it intimately private between just the 2 of us. He insisted that having a formal ceremony would reassure the older generation while proudly declaring to the entire world that we were officially together. He always possessed this remarkably unexpected innocence and romance regarding these little things, and since he was the man I was going to spend the rest of my life with, I truly had nothing left to be dissatisfied about. But I will never, ever forget that day, November 26th. The weather was pretty terrible. Harsh winds began howling at the crack of dawn, and by nightfall, it transitioned into a cold, persistent drizzle. Uncharacteristically, neither of us left the apartment, just lazily cuddling up at home to watch movies. I loathed cooking, but he was a naturally gifted chef and even managed to find the time to bake a cake from scratch. When I received the phone call, he was right in the middle of frosting the cake. The entire apartment smelled overwhelmingly sweet, thick with the scent of fresh cream and diced fruit. The call was from my advisor, telling me that one of the data points in my thesis wasn't lining up and asking me to head over to the lab that night to fix it. I grabbed my coat while still on the phone, but the moment I turned around, I found him blocking my path. Standing backlit against the light, he asked in a completely casual tone, "What's wrong?" "Something came up, I need to head out for a bit." "We haven't finished the movie yet, you're not allowed to go." I honestly thought he was just messing around. "We can finish it when I get back. You want me to bring you back some late-night takeout?" "Are you heading to the university?" I murmured in agreement. "There's a problem with the lab data, I need to go check on it." "You are not allowed to go." "It's not a huge deal, just handle it tomorrow." "It'll be super fast, I'll be back in 2 hours tops." Saying that, I tried to step around him, but he viciously grabbed my wrist. "You are not allowed to go." That was the 3rd time he said it. A bolt of lightning flashed outside the window, casting a stark, blindingly white light directly over his face. He was wearing the apron I had picked out for him. A cute little thing covered in tiny floral prints against a pink background. But his eyes were locked dead onto me, and his already light-colored irises seemed to drain of all color until they were practically transparent, instantly reminding me of a massive predatory cat winding up for a kill. A violent shiver racked my body for absolutely no reason. "Aurora." He spoke in a flat, deadpan voice. I said, "You are not allowed to go." "Why are you acting completely psycho?" "I already promised my advisor." "Are that garbage advisor and that garbage data really that important?" My own temper flared up. "I know you look down on my advisor and you look down on my academic career. But I am a fully grown adult, and nobody can stop me from doing what I want to do." After snapping at him, I forcefully shoved past him to the front door. Behind me, he lunged in pursuit. I whipped my head around, only to see that he was still gripping the metal frosting spatula in his hand. Was I being overly sensitive? But at that exact moment, I was genuinely terrified because his reaction was so insanely abnormal. I panicked and bolted into the elevator, frantically mashing the door close button while watching out of the corner of my eye as he marched toward me, the metal blade in his hand catching a glint of light. Thank God, the elevator doors finally clamped shut. My hands were shaking too violently to drive, so I had to call a car service. The data error was much messier than I originally anticipated, and I slaved over it for more than 3 hours before finally fixing it. By the time I walked out of the lab, it was close to midnight. The campus was completely deserted, though the street full of bars just outside the university gates was still bustling with noise. Before I even made it to the street, I spotted James standing a short distance away. He had changed his clothes, wearing a baseball jacket paired with sneakers. I had bought him those shoes. Boys love stuff like that, but they always looked exceptionally good on him. Surrounded by the chaotic noise of the crowd, I finally managed to catch my breath, inwardly laughing at myself for making such a massive deal out of nothing earlier. He walked straight toward me, keeping his hands stuffed in his pockets. Seeing that his expression looked totally normal, I figured I would just act a little cute and let the whole thing blow over. "What are you doing here?" "I came to pick you up and take you home." He grabbed my hand with one of his. "I noticed you didn't drive." "Well, it's raining today, and I didn't trust my driving skills." "I know." He flashed a quick smile. "You little idiot pig. You can't do anything without me." Hearing that left an incredibly sour taste in my mouth, but I didn't bother arguing with him. Suddenly, a sharp chill clamped down against my wrist. I looked down and saw that the hand he had just pulled out of his pocket was gripping a blindingly bright pair of metal handcuffs. I violently yanked my hand back. "What the hell are you doing?" "You are staying right next to me tonight. Don't run off anywhere." "Then just use your words like a normal person. Why do you need to put this on me?" He actually chuckled again. "What's the big deal if we handcuff ourselves together?" He was seriously asking me what the big deal was. I was on the verge of losing my mind entirely and spun around to storm off. He lunged to grab me again, and as I thrashed wildly to break free, my foot slipped, and I went tumbling straight down. We had been standing at the top of a steep incline with dozens of concrete stairs plunging downward. The rain was still falling, making the surface insanely slick, and I didn't stop falling until I crashed onto the very bottom step. He scrambled down and scooped me into his arms. "Aurora." His voice was entirely unrecognizable, screaming my name so loudly it cracked, yet I remained eerily calm as I told him. "Take me to the hospital. Sometimes life just works exactly like that. Your luck runs dry, and you get hit by the absolute worst possible coincidence. Falling down a flight of stairs that small shouldn't have been a huge deal, but there happened to be a jagged piece of rock jutting out at the bottom, which sliced perfectly across my face. The gash wasn't wide, but it was horrifyingly deep. It took 6 stitches to close, and you can still see the scar to this day. I refused anesthesia while the doctor stitched me up, trembling violently through the agonizing pain. He held me tightly in his arms. Suddenly, something cold splashed against my face, and looking up, I saw his tears tracking down and dropping directly onto me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Aurora, I'm so sorry. I had absolutely no idea what to say, so I just defaulted to, 'It's okay.'" But was it really okay? I genuinely couldn't say, but at the very least, that scar tied a heavy knot directly inside my heart. I found myself constantly wondering, if he had caught up to me that night in the apartment without the handcuffs, would he have used the frosting blade instead? This time, I only walked away with a scar, but what about the next time? My instincts were entirely correct. I hated using the word, but he was basically stalking me. He drove me to work every single morning and was there to pick me up exactly the second my shift ended. My co-workers were insanely jealous that I had such a devotedly attentive fiancé, but I was the only one who knew that my heart was suffocating under the crushing pressure. The wedding proceeded exactly according to schedule. After the ceremony ended, I was exhausted beyond belief, collapsing motionlessly in the dressing room. The reception outside was still deafeningly loud as our family and friends celebrated, but their sheer joy utterly failed to infect me. He suddenly walked into the room, snapping the door shut with a loud click before stepping up behind me and resting his hands on my shoulders. My entire body went rigid as I forced a tight smile at him through the mirror reflection. "Why did you come in here? You look tired. Do you want something to eat?" "I don't really have an appetite." He hummed an acknowledgement and fell totally silent, the atmosphere twisting into something bizarrely oppressive. His fingertips lightly traced the shallow scar slicing across my cheek before he abruptly announced, "After we get back from the honeymoon, You should quit your job. No. I instinctively fought back, then desperately backpedaled. I mean, why? Going to work is too exhausting, and it's not like I can't afford to take care of you. Wouldn't it be better to just stay home and be a good Mrs. Miller? He locked eyes with me through the mirror as he spoke. I horrifyingly realized that I didn't feel a single ounce of joy from being pampered. My face was completely drained of color, plastered in pure panic. I was terrified, fundamentally completely terrified, and I couldn't lie to myself about it anymore. But I was completely trapped. We had just sworn our vows on stage to love each other for the rest of our lives. So how could I already be planning my escape? Seeing my massive reaction, he immediately dropped the subject. We went out of state for our honeymoon. Over the course of that month, I practically erased the terrible memories of everything that had happened right before the wedding, and it felt exactly like we had gone back to the beginning. I obsessively repeated to myself over and over again. This is your husband. You are supposed to love him and trust him, not analyze his every move and cower in fear of him. But the second we got back home, I discovered that he had submitted a letter of resignation to my company under my name, leaving me completely unemployed. That sparked the most violently explosive argument we ever had, and in a fit of blinding rage, I screamed that I wanted a divorce. He slapped me across the face. The strike didn't hurt much, but the instant his hand made contact, we both froze dead in our tracks. Before I could even raise a hand to touch my cheek, he practically tackled me, locking me in a bone-crushing embrace. He hysterically begged for my forgiveness over and over again, swearing on his life that it would never happen again. But the only thought repeating in my head was that I truly needed to divorce him, because yes, we all know the truth. Domestic violence only happens 0 times, or infinite times. The moment a man raises his hand against you, no matter what twisted excuse he gives, you have to pack up and are you and Dio, you think I never tried to leave him? Because I did. I desperately begged my parents for help, but they absolutely refused to believe a single word I said. He was such a wonderfully perfect man. Who on earth would ever believe he actually struck me? I secretly consulted with an attorney, fully intending to directly file for divorce. But he found every single one of my personal IDs and legal documents, hiding them all away. He even forged a psychiatric evaluation report to convince everyone around me that I was suffering from severe mental illness. The attorney blatantly warned me that without my IDs, without a personal income, and with that psychiatric document floating around, attempting any legal proceedings would be nearly impossible. I fought tooth and nail, completely draining myself dry, and walked away with absolutely nothing. It was only at that exact moment that I was finally forced to admit the truth. My husband was attempting to kill me. He wasn't murdering my physical body, but he was massacring my psychological existence and my entire social identity. He intended to systematically erase every single trace of my existence as an independent human being, twisting me into a husk that could only survive as a parasite clinging to him, completely ensuring that I could never, ever leave his side. I know my clinical depression is rotting away at me. I faithfully swallow all those pills, Prozac, Zoloft, but they are completely useless. My parents worry about me, and my friends care about me, but not a single one of them believes me, and none of them will save me. I don't know what to do anymore, and I have absolutely no idea how he and I ever ended up like this. Everything I am about to tell you is the absolute truth.
No matter how absurd or ridiculous it might sound, I swear to you with everything I have that it all really happened. The man sat completely still, his hands resting on top of each other. He maintained an extremely distinguished appearance, with his hair trimmed incredibly short and his fingernails meticulously manicured. The lighting in the room was exceptionally dim, yet his face remained undeniably handsome. This is not our first time meeting. What I am about to say next will likely convince you that I am completely insane, but I genuinely don't care what you think of me. I am a time traveler. Look at your face. Are you trying to laugh? Or do you just feel pity because you think I've genuinely lost my mind? No, I am not insane. The first time I traveled back to the past, I spent an agonizing amount of time trying to convince myself of the same thing. I frantically scoured through endless research materials, desperately trying to construct a scientific theory to explain how this was happening. By the time I triggered the second jump, and then the third, I completely gave up trying to rationalize it. After all, I only came back for one single reason. I had to save my wife. I know she was regularly coming to you for psychiatric counseling. You are the most highly acclaimed therapist in the city, and I was actually the one who originally gave her your business card. How exactly did she describe me to you? Was I her deeply devoted lover? Or was I a raging tyrant? I am willing to bet it was the latter. I also noticed there was something fundamentally wrong with me, and my temper seemed to be mutating into something increasingly explosive. If you were forced to remain trapped inside the exact same loop of time for as long as I have, you would inevitably suffer the same psychological damage. Why did I need to save my wife? Because she died, and I absolutely refused to accept her death. During the first timeline, she died devastatingly early, right in the middle of her master's program. That academic advisor was nearly 30 years older than her, yet he developed a grotesque obsession with her. That bastard manipulated her into attending an out-of-town academic field trip specifically to isolate her, intending to sexually assault her. While violently fighting him off, she plunged off a towering drop. At that point, we were already engaged, having promised each other that we would get married the second she finished her degree. The wedding gown, the reception venue, the honeymoon itinerary. Every single detail was already fully paid for and arranged, but then she just instantly vanished. How exactly was I supposed to accept that? How could I possibly just move on? So the absolute first thing I did the second I woke up in the past was ruthlessly force her to switch advisors. I foolishly believed that solving that single issue would fix everything, entirely ignorant of the fact that manipulating one single thread of fate would violently unravel countless other timelines. Time inherently follows its own absolute laws, brutally ripping someone who was supposed to be dead back from the flow of time triggers an even more violent systemic rejection. I quickly noticed she was constantly getting hurt, ranging from minor scrapes to life-threatening accidents. The most devastating consequence hit on November 26th when she rushed over to the university to correct her experimental data and got struck by a car on her way home. The driver instantly fled the scene, and because it was pouring rain, by the time someone finally stumbled upon her, she was entirely soaked. It was far too late at night, meaning absolutely no one was walking down that street. She just died exactly like that, rotting away in the freezing rain, completely coated in mud. I had to stand there and watch as she was systematically incinerated into a pile of ashes and scooped into a funeral urn. That pathetically tiny handful of fine dust was supposed to be the woman I loved? It was the most horrific joke imaginable. All I had accomplished was delaying her execution. The third time her company forced her to go on a corporate retreat, and their charter bus completely plummeted off a cliff while driving down the highway, instantly killing every single person on board. That time, I wasn't even left with a pile of ashes to bury. The cliff dropped straight into the ocean, leaving absolutely no trace of her corpse behind. I stood frozen at the edge of the crash site for hours. The ocean winds were so violently sharp that they completely dried the tears right out of my eyes. Staring straight down into the abyssal drop, the only thought in my mind was throwing myself over the edge to join her, until another thought violently seized me. Next time I will absolutely stop this from happening. And yes, I actually succeeded. This time, I successfully blocked her from choosing her original advisor. I physically dragged her home on the night of November 26th, and I forced her to resign from her job so she would stay locked safely inside our apartment. The outside world is a fundamentally lethal place. As long as she stays securely locked inside my arms, safely and happily breathing, nothing else matters. You are asking me why she was diagnosed with severe clinical depression? That is a pathetically irrelevant side effect because at the very least, she survived all those horrific death traps. If I successfully saved her once, I can easily save her twice, 3 times, or infinitely. This time, she died because her depression rotted her away from the inside. Next time, I absolutely will not let that happen. You claim she withered away completely suffocated by my self-righteous delusion of protection? You must have never truly lost a person before. You never had to watch someone get violently ripped away from you, not emotionally, but physiologically completely erased from existence. You never had to stare at the exact same person who was sleeping in your bed just yesterday, only to see them lying there completely drained of life the very next second. You will never, ever see her again, and you have permanently and absolutely lost her. She loves me, and I love her, and we swore an absolute oath to be together until the end of time. If she has to wither away, then I will drown her entirely in my love so that absolutely nothing in this world can ever touch her. You think I have already broken her? No, you are completely wrong. This is exactly how I love her. The man smiled softly as he finished speaking. He was exactly as his wife had described him. Incredibly handsome, intensely devoted, and fundamentally broken. After delivering his final words, he calmly stood up from the couch and offered a respectful bow. I am deeply grateful for the time you spent keeping my wife company during her final days. Doctor, we will definitely be seeing each other again. You are demanding that I let her go? He stopped walking, though he entirely refused to look back. Then who is going to let me go? I would rather go completely insane, or be the one who gets butchered over and over again. She is my sole salvation. She is my Prozac. Only time itself knows that my love for her is absolute, and I will strictly pursue it until death.